There has been a slow comeback in recent years to the Valkyrie profile series, starting from the Valkyrie Anatomia Gacha game in 2016. The attention is increasing in recent years to the newly announced spin-off Valkyrie Elysium, and with that, the series is becoming more talked about and gradually dissected, including the Einherjar. The Einherjar was a major gameplay, storytelling mechanic that also doubles as a separate character management mechanic. This was truly a game-defining mechanic that was an experiment that paid off, while it has been reduced in importance in Valkyrie Profile 2, Silmeria. You could still divulge information about the characters in their biographies, and if you release them, essentially letting them live their own lives, they'll give either items or commentary on their current life of where they are, and this would essentially replace the whole evaluation period at the end of chapters in Valkyrie Profile 1. The Einherjar is the crux of the series that has fluctuated throughout the series and remains a fan-favorite staple that lures fans to the series. As such, I'll give my own opinions of the best stories of Einherjar in the series entry that has decreased the importance of Einherjar in series but is still a great mechanic, Valkyrie Profile 2. Here are my top 6 favorite Einherjar in no particular order from Valkyrie Profile 2. The very first Einherjar you collect in the game is a military commander that fended off invaders to the island, Freelgard, he inhabited. From the description in the game, a mistake by a subordinate raised suspicions of treason against the king of the island, and this led to the death of Mitra. Mitra was left to die on a battlefield, essentially betrayed by his subordinates, and was held captive for a year in a dungeon, and they do not go into specifics into what type of info they wanted apart from possibly it being secretive info about the kingdom in the island from Mitra. They tortured him for information, but they didn't get any from him. A loyal old boy. Following those events, he was killed, and his body was delivered back to his country, Freelgard, without eyes, ears, or tongue. It seems that the king played a role in Mitra's death. He may have permitted the decision to abandon Mitra on the battlefield. After seeing Mitra's dead body, he regretted his decision and broke down in tears. He has a really good premise because of being a loyal soldier that may be turned into a revenge plotline on his country of origins as an Einherjar if he has an expanded storyline later down the road. His life as a commander can also be elaborated upon, especially a cutscene that explains what type of mistake this specific subordinate made that alerted the king or the kingdom's community. It'll also be ripe with potential that this specific soldier may possibly turn into an Einherjar that can shed some light onto the situation in regards to his origins and give other details towards the island he used to inhabit, and also that Mitra might finally have a dialogue buddy. Not bad of a biography for the first Einherjar you collect in the game, if I do say so myself. A woman that used to live in the Nithaf region along with her rich father. Her biography doesn't go into depth for the following: her father either fell into a financial trap and committed suicide, or her father succumbed to a literal trap and died, and because of this lost all his wealth. A little vague if you ask me. Who set the trap? How did he lose all of his wealth because of his death? Wouldn't Jessica inherit his wealth if he died? Oh well, many questions. Perhaps they would be answered in a future re-release expansion for Valkyrie Profile 2 Silmeria, a fan can dream. Following this event, Jessica lost her wealth along with her engagement to her fiancé. They had a child, or she had a child with someone else, it isn't very clear, but she had to gain money somewhere, and it came from becoming an adventurer to sustain herself and her son, Gerald, which is another playable character that you can recruit later on. She doesn't have a likable fiancé if you ask me. She died when she removed a huge gemstone that released an evil dragon. Interestingly, Odin planted and released that dragon in the gemstone to destroy Nithaf, and was either there at the wrong location at the wrong time, or Odin intentionally wanted to kill her along with Nithaf. This might be a very strong reason that Silmeria made her and her son an Einherjar, as she is the rebellious type, and she most likely pitted Jessica for her horrible death by the dragon and Odin's wrathful way of dealing with situations, and doesn't care about killing innocent people along the way. This is a case of riches to drag story coupled with planned parenting going not as planned. She may be suffering from moving on from her past and wishes to meet the people from her previous life, which are most likely dead at this point, except for her son of course. Conan is an interesting villainous character, as I honestly do not know what Silmeria sees in this Einherjar besides being a cunning manipulator. This guy has a lot of beef with other Einherjars as he caused their death and denies his involvement in some of their deaths and the ordeal he had created. He killed Richelle and Roland and indirectly caused the death of Aaron and Frauder. The dialogue between Conan and the other Einherjar could be a chapter all on its own. His biography in-game states that he was a lesser lord of a small region and climbed his way up to become so important that he became involved in state affairs. He established a neutral establishment that sparked a civil war. From what I gather, Count Leon was the victor, and that is favorable for Conan because it brought him closer to the seat of power. I am not exactly clear what the text means with certainty. Going off of my assumption, I assume he was close to Count Leon and he would probably assassinate Count Leon or convince him that Conan is better suited for the role as a ruler. On the day that he would be crowned as a pope, he was killed by Erd, good boy, and the plan was led by another evil holy man, although it is ambiguous as to whether this holy man is evil or not because the game doesn't go into details about his predicament. I will get into this later. This holy man is Hinan. My evaluation of him is that he is a lizard-like character, cunning, ambitious, and doesn't care about the consequences of their actions along the way. A pretty good storyline that I want to see explored in the future by Triace and Square Enix if they could. I honestly want to see the sequence of events that led him from a lord of a small region to creating his faction, how he created the division of the Sacred Cross Regiment that handles combat for the faction, and where and how he manipulates members into joining and how the hell he became a pope. There's a lot of potential here for an expanded storyline on this Einherjar if Sukihiro Tomita, Yoshinori Yamagishi, Bunno Fujisawa, if they are interested in venturing into writing his life and his new life as an Einherjar. One of the most tragic backstories that are only beaten out by 3 other characters, coupled with the fact that her story shows to not perceive the gods as one-dimensional heroes that save everyone and does only good. She's a member of a tribe that are professional horse riders that are blessed by their god's protection if the tribe becomes Einherjar for the gods. Atrasia disliked this exchange as she doesn't like the idea of her tribe's inhabitants becoming pawns for the gods. This rebellious trait reminds me of Arngrim as it reminds me how he dislikes authority. She gave a proposal to either the chief of the village to go to Nibelheim and this made the gods angry, or she directly gave this proposal to the gods in some way, and this angered the gods. Well, it's not entirely clear along with the fact that we don't know what she wanted to do in Nibelheim. Does she want to become an undead as a sign of protest or something? One way or another, the gods are furious and destroy her village. Luckily, they spared her child, but the reasons are unknown. And we don't recruit her child as an Einherjar either, so maybe her child lived a normal peaceful life. Atrasia is thankful to the gods that her child lived, which contrasts with what her opinion of how the gods behave, as she states that they are crueler than Nibelheim's demons, and I'll be honest, the gods ain't angels, I'll tell you that much, as they ruthlessly kill everyone that opposes them and treat their Valkyries in an inhumane fashion and as pawns along with lesser gods and Einherjar. While not every god is like this and there are nuances to the gods' character traits, generally this opinion is true. There was a false version of this story that was spread around in the game, it seemed. The story goes that Atrasia was the protector of the village and she broke the rules by bearing a child, and she was relieved of her title as the protector of her tribe, and without a protector, the undead wiped out the entire village. Luckily, Atrasia managed to flee and escape with her child, but unfortunately, she died due to exhaustion. We don't get any tidbits as to how this version of the story got out there, but I'll chop it down to how normally folklore gets misconstrued the more people talks about it. Her story is tragic and fascinating. I do wonder how her village got the protection of the gods. In a way it seems like the gods are farming Einherjar like humans are farming eggs from chickens from this tribe. The illegitimate daughter of Queen Lilia, another Einherjar you can recruit as well, which Lydia has suffered great shame and disdain for. She's been a proficient and skillful archer on the battlefield since she was young, and this gave purpose to her life. Lydia's father is Walder, a mage that looks scarier than Conan surprisingly, and is in stark contrast to how his personality can be, caring, and kind. Walter is the man Lilia eloped with on the day that Lilia and the King of Krell Monferine. Yikes, honestly I don't care that much about the city as there seem to be some bad seeds there if you played Valkyrie Profile 1, but that's enough moment. Unfortunately, they were discovered, Walter was killed and Lilia was returned to Krell Monferine along with Lydia. A month after returning to Krell Monferine, Lydia's mother, Lilia, flung herself from the castle walls to kill herself because she couldn't deal with the grief of getting her husband killed and leaving Lydia motherless. If that wasn't bad enough, her younger brother-in-law, Prince Cain, was jealous of her skills as an archer/warrior and hired a group of thugs to kill her. In Lydia's dialogue towards Lilia in battle, she bears resentment towards her mother, Lilia, as she states that her mother's selfishness made her a victim along with Walter. I honestly want to see her storyline recreated and fleshed out with cutscenes, as her story has the same potential as Valkyrie Profile 1's Einherjar recruitment phases and even beats out 90% of them, and only being beaten out by Lenith's story, it just has a perfect structure for exploring family, misfortune with a good climax. My reason for these opinions is because it seems to be a very clever dark twist on the whole Rapunzel storyline, the princess in the tower having a happy life in the end, but in this case, it's the complete opposite with a gruesome end. It's definitely not like the movies, not a happy ending. I combine these two characters into one single entry as they share the same timeline and also influence each other's stories significantly, plus they are sisters that have both tragic endings, but it is the build-up that makes the ending so satisfying and officially the best Einherjar story in both mainline games, even if their life didn't start out worse than the story of Lenith and Lucian when reading their vague biographies, but one of them has a more than sufficient plot twist and the start of the story is actually more relatable. They both had a simple but poor life, that's it. They don't give any more information about what their lives were like specifically other than that. Miladia's life one day changed overnight when her sister, Safala, got married to a very rich lord from the local area. This made her very uncomfortable because she wasn't accustomed to the life of the rich and went back to their previous house. Little did she know that the rich lord I was writing about earlier was the target of Safala's assassination plans. I am also assuming that Miladia doesn't know about her sister's upbringing as an assassin in association with the Thieves Guild. Safala being trained as an assassin and Miladia doesn't suspect a thing is what I find hard to believe, so I think the story writer may have intentionally left out details here, but then again Miladia does look like the naive type to me. Safala received a threatening letter from the Assassination Guild, and I presume that it is because of her not completing her assassination of her husband. She told her husband about the whole ordeal and asked for help to destroy the Thieves Guild by setting to their main building of operations. She had to protect her sister too, so what she did was not tell her of any of this and practically ignored her to keep her safe from harm. From Miladia's point of view, she was showing disdain towards the poor. She was disowning her and burning an area of their previous inhabitancy. This distorted her view of her sister. After that, Safala's husband was killed by a member of the Thieves Guild. The guild proceeded to recruit Miladia to replace Safala under the pretense of letting common folk live more peaceful lives. I am assuming they wanted Miladia to take her place because Safala was kidnapped and Safala couldn't speak because her throat got crushed, and this made her unable to talk to others. If they include a more expanded allocation of time in VP2 for the stories of Einherjar and included cutscenes that depict these scenes, I think it would have had a better following for its story/lore than Final Fantasy X for the Seer tragedy if it is handled properly. Like, I cannot believe how good these two's biography is. Square give try, Ace another chance at Valkyrie Profile 2. Or sell it to the Embracer group. I want more games, as you can tell. After Safala was sold into slavery, she died shortly afterward, and the general public was told that she died in the fire she caused in their old town, but this is a false fabricated story made by the Thieves Guild. When her sister found out about how she really died and what her real reasons for burning some part of their old town were and why her sister disowned her, Shit hit the fan for the Thieves Guild. Militia exacted her revenge by setting fire to the Thieves Guild, and with a surprising twist, she decided to burn along with them as self-inflicted penitence. Damn, this is one hell of a conclusion, and I stick by my opinion that this is the best story of an Einherjar story in the entire series, and it is the best story on this list. I can just imagine the scene of her surrendering to the fire around her while thinking of her past with her sister. Honorable mentions. A legendary hero that protected the town Kalstad from invasion from the city of bad vibes, Krell Monferine. Seriously, anything to do with the city is all about invading other areas. It would be interesting to get their motivations explored at some point in the series. Anyway, back to Arcana. She used her knowledge of weather patterns to thwart the invasion from Krell Monferine, but at the fourth invasion attempt, unfortunately, Arcana died in the arms of her best friend after suffering a serious injury. Her best friend, Rashika, is also an Einherjar. The reason I have her as an honorable mention is that even Krell Monferine's troops mourned her death because of her archery skills. I think it might have been more effective if they showed cutscenes battling the enemies to her limit, and I don't know why, but she screams. I would even save a dying enemy on the battlefield, or I would show pity and empathy to a captured enemy. Kind of like Loffer in his dialogue in Valhalla. This, in conjunction with the high possibility of poverty in Kalstad, would make for an impressive side story. The son of Gilm and Sylphide, two other Einherjar you can collect in the game as well. His father's story is a lot like the Linus from Valkyrie Profile 1, and that's also the reason why I have removed Gulm's entry in the honorable mentions section and a potential entry in the top 6 because of unoriginality and a rehash. I did this under advisement as it is a good copycat, so I didn't decide this lightly, and that is Stein's backstory when he was in Sylphide's womb, but what happened when he became an adult warrior? Well, his story starts as a revenge plot, and it's a good one too. He wants to take revenge on the undead because of the death of his mother. Her life was saved by her husband, Gilm, through soul transfer, and Gilm died instead, by sealing the gate to the underworld with 2 other people, which you can collect as Einherjar too. His helpers' names are Sylvia and Christy, but they came later down the line though. Tragically, he got trapped inside the gates and was subsequently tortured by hell for the rest of his life. He has an interesting philosophy too that bumps up my opinion of him too. There is good and evil, truth and deceit among both of them. He also sees Midgard as a harvesting place for both Asgard and Nibelheim. The former takes the best, the latter the rest. This is sort of proven true by the story of Atresia. At least Midgard does this explicitly, and Freya even corroborates this idea near the ending of Valkyrie Profile 1. A mage that got possessed by an ancient divine book for 3.5 years and contributed to various events such as the kidnapping of warrior princess Seals and the death of Conan. He regrets what he did when he was possessed, even if what he did during his possession wasn't his fault. Unfortunately, his possessed past caught onto him in one way or another. He was killed by several rioters. I wanna see his tragic death, honestly. Masato was a brave mage with a plan to assassinate the tyrant who ruled his country at the time, but was betrayed by his best friend on this quest. It is a bit unclear who his pursuers are. I am assuming it's the minions of the unnamed tyrant, but he fled from his pursuers by crossing the ocean and living a peaceful life and chasing away any undead that attacked villages. He died due to a failed spell he used. His story is as interesting as it is unfortunate. He has some relatable dialogue with Alicia, as he has a sad sentiment of not knowing what to do with his life apart from killing the undead or his designated target. Thank you so much for watching the video. I made this video because I always hear that the Valkyrie Profile 1 Einherjar is so good but not in Valkyrie Profile 2, so I made a video about it. It has so much potential for expansion if Square Enix ever decides to make an enhanced expansion like Near Reincarnation. I consider the Einherjar in Valkyrie Profile 2 to be better than the first entry, and I wanted to show it. Please check out the Valkyrie Profile Discord server. They also accept Star Ocean fans too. Do comment down below what other videos you all would like to see in the future. I'm currently busy with a few scripts, specifically the Valkyrie Profile 2 review and the Valkyrie Profile 1 Length mobile port. See you all next time.